Hello, welcome to No Prayer More Powerful. I'm Kari Wolf, and this is the inaugural episode of 2026. So, hooray for making it here. And I want to talk about what I see as the energy of this year thus far. For me, I've only been sitting with it for a week or so. I've had a very busy holiday period, like so many of us, but I see a real dichotomy of predictions and discussion points around this next year. There's definitely a continuation of some of what we saw around this time of year in 2025, where there's, forecasts of apocalypse and doom and dismemberment and societal collapse, all that fun stuff. And I see some of that continuing, and I understand why, absolutely. But interestingly, I've also seen some glimmers of hope. I think that people can really only tolerate catastrophic uh, predictions of the future for so long. Many of us are more drawn towards hope, and I am so encouraged to see glimmers of that coming through for the way people are talking about 2026. And specifically when it comes to art and culture, which are things that I care deeply about as a reader, as someone who engages in culture and loves culture, and as someone who creates culture. I have my first book out. I have more on the way. Very interested in this topic. There's a lot of commentators who are talking about the coming of a renaissance, which is very exciting. And as much as I understand why people are still cautiously or not so cautiously predicting further catastrophe and strife, I also see really why people are pointing towards the creation of new things. And that's the energy I want to lean into myself. There is, many of the people I've spent time with and learned from talk about the polarity of energies that we experience on planet Earth. And if that sounds a little new agey and silly, all it just means is that there's good and bad, there's light and dark, light and shadow. And we need both, and they both serve their purpose. And I am a very enthusiastic weeder of my garden. I've done a lot of clearing out at the end of 2025, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So I'm a fan sometimes of destruction and clearing things away. But ultimately, what I want to do is I want to create something new and I want to build. And that's where I want to spend my time and my energy. So although I will continue to sit with and ruminate on 2026 throughout January, because I think we really need time, especially if you have a busy holiday period the way that I did. You need time to really feel into what is to come. I already have some ideas about the deliberate and intentional way I am going to engage with art, culture, technology, and my own creative energy this year. So let's get into that. So, first of all, building off of all of the clearing I've done at the end of 2025, which felt absolutely amazing, I am going to be incredibly mindful of anything that I'm bringing into my life, that I'm consuming, that I am bringing into my home specifically this year. And if you are if you are an enthusiastic consumer, and I don't think that's bad, it keeps the economy going, quite frankly. And there's a lot, people are creating beautiful things and we want to support them. And we all know the difference between the negative side of consumption and the more uplifting side of consumption. Nevertheless, I think that it's very easy these days to become oversaturated in stuff, in anything that we consume. And as a parent of three young children who all have birthdays in December, it was really, I went into the end of 2025 clearing massively because I knew we were about to receive more things. And also my children are maturing, their interests are changing, they're developing as people. And I have to make room for that. I actually think that in terms of trying to cultivate the maturity I want to bring our family into, I have to make space for that to grow, and that means clearing away things, not in an overly enthusiastic way where I don't keep any art projects or anything, but just realistically being thoughtful about what we can hang on to, what's actually meaningful, and what it's time to say goodbye to, even though it may have been beautiful. So a lot of Christmas decorations went this year at the end of the year, some salt dough, some some wooden pasted beautiful things that just really have had their season, are looking a little worse for the wear, and just other things in my life that I am moving on from. And uh, I follow some people in the consumption space, and there are always people who are talking about doing no buys or low buys, and that I think people fall into different camps with how easy they find it to follow a strict set of rules. Strict rules work really well for me. So I don't drink alcohol anymore, and I it works better for me to drink no alcohol than to just drink a little bit of alcohol. I mean I could make a whole other episode about that, because I think that's actually true for most people. But some people do better with just allowing themselves a little bit, or creating a softer way of moving into an experience, and that is great. I actually get very motivated by firm rules. As a family with young children, I can't do a no buy because people outgrow stuff and we need things and we go through things and people break things. So I have my morning cacao and I like to whisk it with an electric whisker. And one of my children put it in the dishwasher. And I didn't spot it and it's broken now. I'm going to buy another one of those because they're inexpensive and they bring me a lot of joy with my morning beverage. But otherwise, kind of the whimsical, uh, just almost you don't even notice bringing it into the house. I'm not doing that. And if that's interesting to people, I can kind of keep you updated throughout the year. I don't wear or own tons of makeup, but I'm motivated by this idea of using up what I do have. And how does that play into culture and the things that I care about? Well, it is about enhancing your creativity, because when you work with things you already have, you have to be creative. I see this with my kids all the time, where there's a lot of toys that we don't buy for them, quite frankly, and the stuff they come up with out of cardboard and paper. I mean, it's just incredible and very inspiring, actually, as a creative person looking at creative children. And I realize I can do a lot of that in my own life if I create some constraints for myself. So I don't need this, I don't need that. I can work with what I have, and I'm willing to bet that there is some alchemy waiting for me in the works, and I can let you know how that goes. The other way that I am being very deliberate with how I engage with culture this year is dovetailing off of that last point, is that I'm not buying any new books. And that is because I have a lot of books that I haven't read yet. People love to buy me books. I love to buy myself books. And in Bath, where I live, there are literary festivals twice a year and amazing authors who come and tour in the city. And so it's very easy to get excited about an event and buy a book. And I've discovered a lot of great works that I would not have picked up otherwise because of this. It was, in fact, some of my favorite reads from last year are books I picked up when I went to hear an author speak in Bath. So that's been really good for me. But I think what's going to be even better this year is reading what I already have. And that includes some new books that I haven't made time for yet, but it also includes going back to the classics. And this is because I am interested in experiencing in depth the production of culture before the internet age. If we are moving towards a renaissance, I don't think it's going to be a renaissance that ignores emergent technology. I don't think that's realistic, and I have a lot more to say about AI. But I think, but what I have noticed looking at Renaissance movements is there is often an interest in the past or in some sort of grounded, rooted lineage that is reinterpreted or rediscovered. So the easy example that is often given in conversations about an emerging Renaissance is how when the city of Constantinople fell in 1453, Greek scholars brought Greek texts to Italy and to other countries where they were more widely disseminated, and people were able to learn from these Greek scholars, because obviously if you're not a Greek speaker, it's not the easiest language to just kind of dip into. And the ideas that came forward from this reacquaintance with the classical past and actually with new Greek texts that were not as widely known in the West, produced aspects of the Renaissance. That's a very simple way of looking at a very complex topic, obviously. But for myself, I although I'm not a total AI naysayer as a writer and as a creator, obviously it's not. I wish we had developed technology to help us in other ways first, perhaps. And so I want to look at writing and art that was created before these technologies became engines for creativity. Before, to put it more crudely, they were writing and drawing and making art for us. And actually, the place I think I'm going to start is a really good novel for winter. It even looks kind of wintry on the front, although I don't think it's set in winter. This is Charles Dickens' Bleak House. I've read it before. It's the first book that ever made me cry. Dickens is very emotionally manipulative. He'll like really get you. But also I think it hit me emotionally because I was in a different space and we experienced culture in a different way. I think that just our receptivity to stories was different when I was reading this. Obviously, TV and movies and things, but there wasn't streaming. There certainly wasn't all the short form video and just the ubiquity of content. And I'll be curious to see as I go through it again, because I remember the story in broad strokes, but I don't remember all the detail. I'm going to see how it hits me emotionally. It's a very long read. It's like 900 pages in this edition, and it's not very big font. It's gonna be epic. But the reason why I picked this one, actually, even though I have like a fond memories of reading it in college, which is when I read it as part of a literature course, is because it's come back into like popular consciousness through a study that was done. And if you are not familiar with this, I'm not gonna like read it out to you here. You can Google, Bleak House literature students, but from memory, it was English majors were asked to read a passage from Bleak House and interpret it, and they were unable to do so. And what was so striking about this and kind of alarming is that it's not like this book was just given to people, like a random selection of people. These are people who say that they like reading enough that they're going to major in it in college. That's this group of people, and they weren't able to make sense of it. And obviously it's old language, but it's not ancient language. It's not even that long ago, really. And so this this experience that was documented has prompted a lot of people to look at literacy and how reading is taught, and in broad strokes, the ideas that have come out of this study include how we are teaching reading of passages rather than whole books. So people aren't reading whole books; they're taught to read little bits of text and then interpret them. And so when presented with a whole book, they don't even know where to begin. And the simple act of just simply opening a book and reading it until it's finished seems really daunting or impossible. And I don't think that this is just fantastical clickbait, one-off example. So this was done in America, and in England where I live, I have a friend who is a English teacher, and he says that his students, so these are students who are self-selected English students. That's the GCSE they're going to take. That's the testing system in the UK. And so they say, yes, this is my subject. I want to read, and I like to read. And he always says to me, he's like, but do they like to read? Because I assign not an impossible amount of reading, maybe like 5 to 10 pages per night, and they just can't do it. So I think it's a real thing. I don't think that this is just like a media generated issue that people are freaking out about. I think it's real. And I think we all know anecdotally from observing ourselves and from observing other people that we struggle to read, in a siloed off, intentional way, perhaps the way we used to. So all of that is to say, I'm starting with Bleak House because it came up in that study, and it's just my own personal belief that writing has an energy and a life of its own. It's going to sound a little woo woo and crazy, but I'm writing books and I hope that they have a lifespan and a mission of their own. And they're going to come out into the culture and they're going to do their own thing. And Bleak House wants to be revisited right now because it's come up in this context. And so I want to delve into it and see what it has to say. And if you're curious about that, you can let me know in comments, or you can send me a DM wherever you want to find me, and I can update you on what I find. So I'm excited about that. It also seems like the perfect kind of winter project because it's so long. I have one of my English teachers actually said she read all of Dickens when she got mono, if people remember what this is, like glandular fever, and she was just so sick of watching TV, she decided to read all of Dickens. I think sometimes it's like that. It might require that kind of experience, but we'll see. We'll see how I do. And then in terms of visual art, in addition to, of course, I'm going to continue to enjoy media. But when I was looking at people talking about the Renaissance, and I was looking at this idea of trying to find roots, grounded roots. So not a lot of people talk about building a new society in a very ungrounded way, in my opinion. And that's great. Like if you enjoy that, go for it. If you want to look up to the stars and you're into aliens and like just do it, go for it. But for me, I'm more interested in what has already been created and what still has life force in it and what can be revived and then reshaped, because I personally think that's how society is built, kind of from the ground up. So one of the Renaissance movements was called the Pre-Raphaelite movement here in England, and the name just tells you all you need to know. So this is obviously this is past the Renaissance of the 15th and 16th century. And for the Pre-Raphaelite artists, the problem with art began in the Renaissance. So Raphael and all of his compatriots in Italy who were making visual art in the Renaissance, they were the problem. And the Pre-Raphaelites wanted to go back to something before that period. So they were very influenced by medieval art and stories and sensibilities. One of them, I just happened to get this book in a charity shop here in England, Edward Burne-Jones. I'm not going to spend a lot of time like reading this, but I'm curious about how people have taken what has come before and made it into something new. And the Pre-Raphaelites are some of my favorite artists. And there was a BBC show about them if you like to learn that way. But also just if you just type that into any old search engine, you'll find some beautiful stuff. And catalogs like this are also, if you're not buying anything like me, then you won't want to look for them, but you can find them in a pretty inexpensive way. So that's how I want to look at culture. I'm also going to play around with some mediums I haven't played around with for a very long time. I'm not like a gamer. I don't play video games, but last year, the author of the Witcher series came to Bath, and I don't even remember why I went to see him speak, but I did. I got his latest book and I actually really enjoyed it, and I didn't expect that. And the room was full of people who are like into video games and into the TV series, but kind of hating on the TV series. And I decided, so the only time I've played video games really was as a child playing Nintendo, and they have like this retro game system, the Super NES, and you can play like Mario Brothers, like the original ones, like 1980s, 90s ones, and like Legend of Zelda and stuff. So I asked for that for my birthday, also in December, and so I'm gonna like play around with that and just see what it feels like to be like really analog. Like I don't know, is the 90s far back enough to be part of my little experiment with heritage? I don't know. I'm going to put it in that category and we can see how that feels to me. But I also suspect that there's going to be something very just grounding and like almost mindful about just like immersing myself in a world in a way that isn't like a headset. That stuff freaks me out. Not for me, but I think just a little, 20 minutes at a time. We'll see. I probably don't have time for it, but I've received that, and I'm going to have a little play around with that. And then I'm going to be experimenting with showing up in culture in some different places. And I really, uh, I really thought long and hard about why I would want to do this because when I've already talked about how saturated all of these spaces are and how much input we're receiving all the time. And there are many compelling reasons to turn up in spaces such as YouTube, such as Instagram. I will be launching a Substack as well. It will be free, so you can find me there and check out some longer form writing. But the reason why I want to show up is that in addition to writing my books, which is my primary offering and my love and joy, I think that these spaces really do have a lot to offer. As much as there's the shadow side that it can be very destructive to attention span and connection and thought processes and brain development and mental health. There are spaces online where thoughtful discussion emerges, where people are encouraged to harness their intelligence to gather discernment and to have and to have compassionate discourse with each other. I think that really does exist online, and that is why we were also drawn to this format to begin with, and why everyone has flooded to the internet originally. So it's my hope to participate in that and to really encourage people to, in particular, sharpen their discernment, to engage with culture and with humanity, with compassion, grace, kindness, a wide scope of understanding. And to me, despite the numerous downsides of showing up online, I I think these are important enough to counterbalance that and to help me harness my courage and come on here to talk to people. So that's how I, at this point, am thinking about 2026 as a creative person. Behind the scenes, in addition to doing all of those things, I am, of course, trying to thoughtfully parent. Hopefully, not just trying, hopefully, actually thoughtfully parenting, and of course, writing my books, which is my primary project and the thing I'm most excited about. And on that note, I am so grateful for all of the reviews and the comments I've received about No Prayer More Powerful, which is my memoir. And if you have picked it up, I'm incredibly grateful. It is available at this point now. It is available everywhere, not just on Amazon. You can find it on bookshop.org, and people can order it into any bookstore you might want. So that feels really exciting to me, and that has galvanized me to want to continue to create and put out books because I think that as much as we are becoming a broadcast culture, as some people say, where we're just taking things in an audiovisual format, reading still gives you something that no other media form can give you. It really sparks the imagination. It enters the psyche and forces you to activate your own creative powers to engage with the story. So if you do nothing else this year, maybe you want to consider reading some books. So that is it for me today. If you enjoyed this show and you want to hang out more, you can subscribe. I would absolutely love that. Leave me a comment. If you are listening, please leave a review on Spotify or Apple or wherever you're finding this podcast. It really helps other people find the show, which is what it's all about. I am so grateful for your time. And if you are interested in longer form content, you can find me on Substack. Everywhere across the board, I am Kari the Wolf, like Virginia Woolf with 2 O's. Thank you for tuning in, and I will catch you next time.